Countries of the Leeward Islands brace for the passage of a dangerous Hurricane Irma. That's our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Tuesday, September 5. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Nicole Best. Good evening. Hurricane Irma, a dangerous Category 5 hurricane, continues to strengthen as it bears down on the Leeward Islands. Irma's maximum sustained winds have increased to 185 miles per hour, making it the strongest Atlantic hurricane since Wilma in 2005. At 5 p.m., Irma was 130 miles east of Antigua and Barbuda, 135 miles east-southeast of Barbuda, and moving towards the west near 15 miles per hour. And this general motion is expected to continue today, followed by a turn toward the west-northwest tonight. And on the forecast track, the extremely dangerous core of Irma is forecast to move over portions of the northern Leeward Islands tonight and early tomorrow. It is expected to remain a powerful Category 4 or 5 hurricane during the next couple of days. Flooding is possible as Irma is expected to produce total rain accumulations of 8 to 12 inches with isolated maximum amounts of 18 inches across the northern Leeward Islands. And as Antigua and Barbuda brace for the unprecedented Category 5 Hurricane Irma, an eerie silence, we're told, seemed to have fallen over the Twin Island nation. Electricity has already been shut off in Barbuda, and on the mainland of Antigua, most people are already off the roads. All 40 shelters are open, and over 100 people have availed themselves of these shelters. We have our correspondent Anika Kentish live on the line to give us an update. Good evening, Anika.
Good evening, Nicole. Well, first off, as you pointed out, it is pretty quiet, with the exception of a car here and there, like this one that's just passing me right now, with some speakers. But generally speaking, people have battened down for the night, and we're just waiting it out to see when the storm is going to pick up. One of the noticeable things so far is that the temperature has dropped considerably from, the sweltering heat earlier in the day to a more cool evening. The wind has picked up a little bit, but nothing yet of tropical storm or even hurricane conditions yet.
So you said that nothing has picked up yet and things are very quiet. What are you hearing from the general public and also from the officials?
Well, I've been speaking to officials from the National Office of Disaster Services, including officials in Barbuda. Really, their concentration at this point in time is to make sure that the shelters are operating the way they should. At about 5 o'clock or just before 5, they had more than 100, but they were expecting that number to increase significantly in the various shelters. Right now, the concern really is to make sure that everybody pretty much stays put and that people listen to the warnings that have been issued by disaster officials and the Met Office. That's pretty much what the Prime Minister was saying on radio this afternoon, where he appealed to people in Antigua and Barbuda to wait out the storm, to do what you can to protect life and to mitigate against damage to property.
We understand that the Prime Minister also, while he was on radio today speaking to the nation, made an announcement, or should I say he indicated that Venezuelan neighbors are on standby to provide assistance to the island if needed?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, he actually spoke about the fact that they have been doing a lot of using a lot of diplomatic channels to ensure that the relief effort begins immediately, and so they have basically spoken to various governments across the region and beyond to ensure that materials are on standby as soon as the storm clears out. One such government is the government of Venezuela, which, according to the Prime Minister, has pledged 2 military planes worth of supplies, which, assuming the storm clears out in a reasonable time and the airport can open tomorrow, as early as tomorrow.
Anika, thank you very much. And we look forward to hearing more from you on this as the time goes by. Thank you very much. That is CMC's correspondent in Antigua and Barbuda, Anika Kentish. Well, the Public Relations Officer of the National Office for Disaster Services, Medice Francis, says that there are 35 shelters available in Antigua and Barbuda. Earlier we heard from Anika's report that there were 40, but she has indicated that there are 38 shelters available, and she has given advice to people who are considering using these shelters.
And what we want to encourage persons to do if they're planning to go to the shelter, you have to make sure that you do that in good time before the winds start to blow and so forth. And you walk with your food, non-perishable food, the water for drinking purposes and other purposes, and your medication, all the other emergency supplies, battery, operated radio, flashlight, and so forth, to really ensure that you're comfortable. It's not your home, but walk with the necessary things that you would need to be comfortable. Bedding, not the mattress, but something that you can sleep on, and really be safe. Take care of your family.
And we just heard from the Public Relations Officer of the National Office for Disaster Services in Antigua and Barbuda, Medice Francis. Well, in studio with us, we have the Executive Director of, well, not yet, he is on his way, that's the Executive Director of the Caribbean Disaster Management Emergency Management Agency, Mr. Ronald Jackson. But with us, we have the Chief Meteorologist and Lecturer at the Caribbean Institute for Hydrology, Ms. Kathian Caesar. Welcome, Ms. Caesar, to our CMC newsroom at this point in time.
Good evening.
And we would like you to just give us a briefing as to what we can expect with this storm in the region going forward.
Right now, we can expect very dangerous conditions. We have, as you said earlier, we haven't had such a powerful storm in the region since 2005 with Wilma, but we haven't had a storm in the Caribbean islands of this strength for quite a while. And so we're expecting winds, as you said, in the region of 185 miles per hour. Storm surge of 5 meters, and this is above wave heights of 10 meters. So pretty dangerous conditions, and we ask all, if you haven't been prepared, as they see in Antigua, they should be, again, very prepared for this storm.
Now, we have been focusing on about 12 or so countries that's in the northern Caribbean side, but we have also noticed that some of the countries on the southern side of the Caribbean, countries across Grenada and even here in Barbados, have had some serious wave action for the last couple hours.
Yes, this should be expected. Now with what we call the rotation of the storm, that is going to push what we call northwesterly winds across the region. You should have noticed the difference between yesterday and today. We're getting a lot more winds, and that is now affecting the surf, and so you're getting rough seas. Now we expect seas in the region of 2.2 to 3.5 meters to be affecting the coast as far south as Barbados. So the islands are going to be affected. There may be even a case of the odd shower too, as the system starts to draw moisture from all the other regions, especially from the south. It's not going to be as strong, but we can expect the odd heavy shower in our area.
Did CIMH anticipate that something like this would happen in the region in this season? I know every now and again you would put out your predictions for the weather pattern for the season. Did you anticipate that?
Well, this is a peak season. We owe, as the late Dr. Gray would say, if you're going to get a tropical storm in the region, you are going to get it between September 5th and September 4th and September 10th. So we're at the peak season. You can see now we have 2 storms and 1 potential storm in the region. Did we predict such a strong storm? It's very difficult to predict such a catastrophic storm in any region. What we did, not we as in CIMH, but the forecasters for the region did predict tropical storms just in the region of just above average, and we're at 10 right now, so we're on track to be above average for this year. And in terms of the strength, we're always looking at how these storms are intensifying. We've seen an uptake in the intensity of some of these storms in the last year as we get potentially a little bit warmer. That's, again, some conjecture there, but we are seeing some increase in intensity in the odd storms. But this is actually record breaking.
But does the intensity that we're seeing now have anything to do with the El Nino and the La Nina systems?
Not directly, because with an El Nino you usually expect to have less storms in the region. With a La Nina type, you expect to have more storms. We did expect an uptick in the number of storms, as I said, this year, but to have something at this strength is again record breaking.
And so what's CIMH doing going forward with this? Just monitoring? What really is CIMH's role now that this is, if I should put it this way, on the ground?
Okay, well, what we've been doing is actually not only monitoring, we've been doing a lot of forecasting. We've been creating weather models. We have right now 3 models that we use, what we call high-resolution model, to help us predict the track of the system better. And we have a wave model, and our wave model has been doing very well. And so we've been warning and briefing SEDIMA and other agencies as we go forward with these systems. So our main goal is to be an advisory to help. We're not the official forecast. The local weather services are your official forecasting, but we try to use the technology to help the region.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Jackson, you have joined us. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on our news set. And we want you to just give us an update from SEDIMA's perspective as to what the preparations are like from SEDIMA's end.
Well, certainly it's been quite extensive, quite hectic. We've been trying to look at the potential impact of what is a catastrophic event at the moment. I don't think in my recent memory, I've heard them say that this is tying the second most powerful storm in history, but in my time in the business, I've not seen category 5++ or a high category 4 potentially impacting 6 states. So this is new ground for the regional system, and they're trying to really put plans in place for 6 member states, potentially 7 over the next few days going into the weekend. So we have been busy pulling together the teams we've trained, looking at the resource requirements, looking at analysis from the information provided by CIMH, who helps us with a little bit of the science. Our work is as much as possible science-based, looking at scenarios, analyzing the population that could be impacted, trying to get a sense of the fragility of the built environment in some of these countries, to ascertain displacement numbers, to know what are the shelter possibilities and shelter potential in these countries, and then seeing whether or not the on-island capabilities can manage this requirement. What are the relief needs and how we're going to be able to address those. We've already received some requests from member states, so we're in the planning mode now, looking at mobilizing teams, looking at logistics requirements, noting that in the best of times, moving between the islands can be a challenge, and so we're looking at how we're going to get teams into these islands immediately after the all clear is given, based on the request from member states.
Now, we've been talking before about 12 countries that we are concerned about, what the rest of the region is concerned about. But you spoke about 6. Which specific 6 is SEDIMA looking at?
Well, we're looking at Anguilla, the British Virgin Islands, Montserrat, Antigua Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, and then Turks and Caicos. But then we are also concerned about the Bahamas. And so we use the number 6 to 9 because we were looking at the longer term forecast. The initial 6 included Dominica because at the time they were on the tropical storm. I think they're still on the tropical storm warning, watch or warning. So they're included in that first 6, with Turks and Caicos and Bahamas carrying us to 8 and Haiti possibly 9.
Okay.
Right.
Earlier today, you met with your regional and international partners, we understand. Could you just give us an idea as to how that meeting went and what were some of the decisions that came out of that meeting?
Right. So the meeting is essentially what we call our donor coordination briefing meeting. And it seeks to ensure that we can harmonize and coordinate the efforts of all the regional stakeholders who are prepared to support the regional response mechanism coordinated by SEDIMA, but also to ensure that whatever comes in is targeting the specific needs. So we would have briefed them both from the CIMH perspective, also what SEDIMA's operational plan will be going forward, and to hear from them what assets they can contribute to the process, what resources they can bring to the table. And so we would have received pledges from some of those key stakeholders indicating whether or not they have technically skilled persons covering specific areas such as water and sanitation, which we call WASH, airport specialists, engineers, the UN disaster assessment teams, which are also deployed to embed with the SEDIMA personnel. We would have heard from the CDB, the Caribbean Development Bank, and what they're planning to do in supporting emergency response efforts in the states, as well as support SEDIMA's regional deployment from the CARICOM Development Fund as well. So a wide range of partners, UN, EU, the ECHO coordinating mechanism, US, the Canadians, who would have contributed into the dialogue. We heard as well from the British representatives who would have given an indication of what their assets in the region would be able to do, given that there are 4 British overseas territories which are part of the SEDIMA mechanism, and there's 1 vessel in the water trying to cover the needs of 4. So we had to now look at what will be the priority, where the gaps will be, how that will be supported by the coordination mechanism. We would have heard as well from our local actors, the Regional Security Systems, which provides for us the activation of the CARICOM Disaster Relief Unit, as well as some potential airlift into some of the islands, CAF or PAHO as well, on the medical side of things.
So coming out of today's meeting and bearing in mind that this is a Category 5 hurricane that the region in our lifetime has not experienced before,
Yes.
how ready would you say SEDIMA and its partners are to deal with the aftermath of such what many are calling an immeasurable disaster?
Well, I think you just mentioned it there, an immeasurable disaster, and you can never be truly ready for that. I mean, we only have to cast our minds to what happened in Houston and the nearby Louisiana, and that's a U.S. state that has resources, but you see how that played out. So I think we are ready within the context of the resources we have available. We are working through those plans to roll out what we have. But we recognize that this is, as we said before, immeasurable, a potential catastrophic event. And the success is not going to be down only to SEDIMA. It is really going to be down to the communities, the people in the countries really exercising true solidarity at this time and working with each other to begin that response, which has to start there. And then the national mechanism will chip in, and then the regional mechanism will get in. And you understand why, because certainly help is going to come from inside first before it can come from outside. And this is starting from house to community to state to region. So we're as prepared as we can be with the resources we have, and we're just going to work through the plans. I mean, earlier we said we are throwing away the operational playbook that we've used because we've been looking at multi-island strike, but more from a 3-4 kind of scenario.
And
we're talking about a 6 to 9.
6 to 9, yeah.
So the playbook has to change significantly and really look at how we incorporate international capabilities into the regional teams. So that's what we're working on at the moment.
And finally, from me, for this point in time,
Yes.
how quickly is SEDIMA planning to be on the ground after the passage of Hurricane Ivan?
Well, as we're
I'm sorry,
plan-
not Ivan. Ivan is the anniversary of Ivan. I'm very
Yes,
sorry.
yes,
It's just
don't worry.
2 days
It's
away,
away, yeah.
so forgive me for calling her Ivan, but it's Irma.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, Ivan comes to mind simply because of how catastrophic it was in
Yes.
Grenada. So I mean, I can get the slip of the tongue there, but
And it's 2 days away. It's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
7th.
it's
2
2
days
days
away.
away.
We are trying our best to see if we can get into Antigua, because even though Antigua and Barbuda will be impacted, it is also going to serve as a very key hub for us to work with the other islands that are in that particular sub-region, which is Anguilla, the British Virgin Islands, Montserrat. So we want to try to get in there on Thursday morning. So we're planning with that in mind. But of course, we're dealing with the variables in nature, whether it picks up speed, it slows down, when the all clear will be given, what assets are available to go in at the time once the all clear is given, whether we can land on an airstrip, whether we have to go by sea. If we're using sea vessels, then the travel time is a little bit elongated. So we're looking at all the options and planning at the moment, and that's what's going to happen for Sedema through the course of this evening into tomorrow, as we also try to keep in touch with our member states, given that a catastrophic event is going to impact on telecommunications, utilities, transportation, water supply, especially if it is coastal, as we go forward. So we're looking at even things such as desalination requirements, or water purification systems, I should say, that are going to be called into play potentially as a result of this event. And I'm sure Kathy spoke about the wave heights.
The wave heights is and the inundation, because you have to think about, not only, I should add, but not only wave heights. Once you get these wave heights, you have what we call coastal inundation, water coming in. With heavy rainfall, you've got water going out. So at some point, there's been no place for that water to go. So I don't think we are no longer talking about a potential for flood. We are going to see catastrophic floods.
Absolutely.
Ms. Caesar and Mr. Jackson, thank you very much, and we look forward to you keeping us appraised as to what's happening in our region. Thank you very much. Stay with us. More hurricane coverage in just a moment.
The government of Dominica and Discover Dominica Authority welcomes you to the most unique Caribbean island, Dominica. Bristle with life, with energy, Dominica enraptures you in the vibrancy of the 20th edition of the World Creole Music Festival, October 27th, 28th, and 29th. Windsor Bank Sports Stadium, Roseau, Dominica, featuring Machel Montano, Sweet Mickey, Movado, Kalasha, Bungie and Fayan, Class, Sakai, Zuko Stars, Roman Virgo, Itana, Issa Banton, Triple K International, Yemi Holiday, Mizikano All-Stars, Breathe, Swinging Stars, and more. Be part of the spectacle. This is the World Creole Music Festival, held in the nature island of the world, Dominica. Season tickets US 125 or 325 EC. Nightly tickets US 48 or 120 EC. Visit dominicafestivals.com, where you will yearn for more. Say Mizikano.
Dominica.
Welcome to SwiftPack, your online shopping and shipping solution. Receive the best rates, expert cargo management, and exceptional customer service. SwiftPack provides secure handling of your smallest packages to your largest cargo with speed and reliability. We invite you to use our US mailbox service, online shopping, ship air and ocean cargo from the supplier to your door. We handle it all for you. Get started now. Sign up for a free regular account or premium account, or give us a call on 440-6100. SwiftPack. You shop, we ship, you save.
Some changes have been made to ensure the safe flow of traffic at the intersection of Orange Hill Road and Claude Noel Highway. Motorists can no longer merge from the highway onto Orange Hill Road and into the MP gas station. Delineators, the yellow-colored posts, have been installed to prevent this illegal turn.
Initially, when we widened the roadway and we marked it, we expected that the population knew what the markings meant.
Welcome back. Dominica is under tropical storm warning, and reports coming to CMC earlier in the day say that the island is already experiencing some rain and flooding. Joining us now on the phone is Garvin Richards as he gives us an update as to what's taking place in Dominica. Good evening, Garvin.
Hi, good evening, Nicole, and good evening to the many viewers across the region. You quite rightly said, Nicole, we had some earlier downfalls about midday, which went into about 2 o'clock. Things are quite down for a bit. They're a bit quiet for now, as the first band of showers associated with Hurricane Irma are dissipated. But we're anticipating some more rain this evening and into the early hours of tomorrow morning. Irma, Nicole, as you know, Dominica were no strangers to natural disasters. Just 2 years ago, we were faced with Tropical Storm Erica, which destroyed $1 billion or caused $1 billion worth of damage. So we're well prepared this time around for Hurricane Irma. As I speak to you, the Prime Minister had already closed the government offices as of 12 o'clock, and he had also encouraged the private sector, to follow suit. And schools were closed today, and schools will remain closed tomorrow, as well as we continue to prepare for the arrival of Hurricane Irma.
About flooding, well, we can see some of that there now on the screen. Which parts of the island experienced that flooding that we heard about, and how severe has it been so far?
Okay, in my estimation, I would say there was more flash flooding associated with some heavy bands which occurred about midday, 1 o'clock. There was some reports of flooding in the northeast, in the Woodfordale and Wesley areas, Peebush. These are in the northeastern parts of Dominica. As a matter of fact, the water systems were shut down at those parts of the island around midday to protect the water systems from damage. Also on the screen, you're looking at some flooding from Grand Bay, which is also in the southeastern part of Dominica. Just some minor flash flooding, which took place earlier in the day. Things are a bit quiet now, as I said earlier on, because we are anticipating some more rains and gusty winds. We're not anticipating hurricane force conditions, but tropical storm force conditions just sometime tonight into tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Garvin, and we trust that we can hear some more from you tomorrow, God's willing. The prayers of the region are with you and the people of Dominica, especially since you are still recovering from the passage of Tropical Storm Erica in 2015. Well, earlier on Tuesday afternoon, we spoke with former broadcaster with Win FM in St. Kitts and Nevis, Tony Frederick Armstrong, and at that point in time, there was not much activity. Tony had said that it was a bit windy with the occasional spit of rain, and she had described the light as being strange, and she said that the birds were all gone. So shops were closed at midday and water was supposed to be turned off at 5 o'clock, and power is expected to be turned off, she said, when the winds get higher. Well, Chairman of the CARICOM, Grenada's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell has expressed solidarity with the governments and the people of the Leeward Islands. Earlier on Tuesday, Dr. Mitchell reached out to several of his counterparts, pledging Grenada's support to their respective governments. Dr. Mitchell, who was Prime Minister at the time that Hurricane Ivan wiped out over 90% of Grenada's GDP, says that the country knows too well the devastation such hurricanes can cause. In a statement issued on Tuesday afternoon, Dr. Mitchell called on all to pray for our northern brothers and sisters so that they do not experience the wrath that Irma can bring, adding that it can take years to rebuild what the storm would have destroyed in hours. The CARICOM chair said that in this region, when one neighbor is sick, the symptoms are felt by all, and that any disaster that strikes our neighbors is a threat to all of us. He said Grenada stands ready and willing to assist its neighbors in any way possible should the need arise. Well, meanwhile, Grenada's National Disaster Management Agency, NADMA, continues to monitor Hurricane Irma and remains in contact with disaster management agencies in countries that are likely to be affected. Dr. Mitchell is online at this point in time. Good evening, Dr. Mitchell.
Good evening, Nicole, and of course, good evening to your audience.
Very much for joining the Caribbean Media Corporation's newscast, but on such a troubling occasion, but nonetheless we thank you for joining us. And we understand that today you reached out to a number of your prime ministerial counterparts across the region.
Yes, I did, and of course other prime ministers have done likewise. We, of course, are very, very concerned with what appears to be could be an independent disaster. As you quite rightly said in your report, we in Grenada had, in 2004, we saw the wrath of Ivan. And Ivan was about 35 miles, and it didn't come with a lot of rain. And it did wipe out 200% of GDP, and of course destroyed about 90% of the housing stock in the country. And of course our agricultural sector was decimated. in the face of what we experienced and what we see as 185 miles per hour wind in a much flatter country, in much flatter countries, as St. Kitts, Antigua and Guyana and others, St. Martin and so on, we are quite frightened by the prospects of what could be emerging in those countries.
Dr. Mitchell, we said earlier in the newscast that you sat in the chair of the Prime Minister when Hurricane Ivan struck. Now, this is happening just about 2 days before the anniversary of Hurricane Ivan. Does it bring back any
Yes, it does,
memories?
Nicole, because I could remember when I emerged the morning after Ivan and looked around and saw the whole country on the ground. You could imagine the state that I was in emotionally, psychologically, and otherwise. I remember the Prime Minister residence was destroyed. I left the Prime Minister residence about 2 hours before the hurricane hit, because I didn't think that the old colonial building was going to withstand the hurricane that I saw coming. And I went to my own home, which had about couple layers, so I was able to stand a lot apart and therefore escape any physical hurt. But had I stayed at the Prime Minister residence, I don't think he would be talking to me at this point in time. And I saw the entire country, so I was damaged psychologically and otherwise. And I remember when Secretary Powell, the United States Secretary of State, was sent by President Bush to Grenada, he stayed by my side the whole day with his arm on my shoulder, because I think he recognized that I would have needed a lot of psychological support. So it was not just the coming America sending the top diplomat to the country to look at how to aid us, but also to provide psychological help to the leadership of the country. And Prime Minister Manning, at that point when Trinidad came to Grenada, and I remember him saying when he was at my home, and I was telling him time to go because we didn't have the airport was not functioning, and I felt that he should leave before it get dark. And he said he couldn't, and he said he was concerned not about the Prime Minister, he was concerned about Keith Mitchell, the person, because he felt that if I wasn't in a best place as a person to deal with the problems, then it would be difficult for me to deal with the problems that were emerging nationally. So it brings back very serious memories to me, and I really I'm quite frightened. I spoke to my colleague Gaston Brown today, and I told him that we are praying for him and his countrymen at this particular time, and I did so with Prime Minister Harris, and of course Prime Minister Chastity and others have been in touch. So we all preparing ourselves to provide all the support that we can. We don't have a lot of resources, but whatever resources we have to make them available, Nicole, because you recall when Grenada was damaged, as I mentioned before, we got help from all quarters. Many of the OECS countries, almost all, gave up, made a lot of sacrifices to help us to recover. So we certainly, Grenada would be one of the first ready to provide the support because of what we went through and understood what could be happening in other countries.
Dr. Mitchell, as CARICOM chairman, what is your message to the rest of the world that's listening online?
My message is one that is something that we've been talking about consistently. There's been this fallacy that countries, each economy has been doing reasonably well and reach a certain per capita, that they graduated us as middle-income countries. And this is a fallacy we're pointing out to them over and over, that small states that may be doing well because they are attempting to manage their own affairs, overnight the economy could be decimated. So to graduate out from opportunity to get concessionary loan, to me, is economically rather foolish. And we've been making the point, and as we saw in Grenada, in a few hours in Grenada, 200% of the country's GDP were destroyed, and therefore we had to build back from scratch. And to have graduated us to the point they were talking about showed the fallacy of that argument and the position taken. So I certainly, the message on the international community, the vulnerability disaster must be a major factor when you're looking at looking at graduating people, small countries. The countries that are small and who are facing impending disasters in some of the hurricane zones and of course earthquake and so on must be treated differently, and there must be a factor in the equation of economic support that takes care of that fundamental problem.
Dr. Mitchell, thank you very kindly.
Thank you, Nicole. All the best to your audience, and let us pray for the people of Antigua, St. Kitts, St. Martin, and Anguilla, and all the other countries that might be affected.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Speaking with the chairman of CARICOM and the Prime Minister of Grenada, Dr. Keith Mitchell. Well, the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, the CBU, has also sent a message of support to its member stations in the path of Hurricane Irma. Chairman of CBU, Gary Allen, encouraged management to safeguard staff and property, even as news teams brave the weather to ensure their respective nations remain informed. He also encouraged all to be safe and secure in their operations as indigenous media entities committed to providing dependable information necessary for affected persons to respond to changing circumstances. And he said that as Hurricane Irma approaches, what is needed is credible and reliable information to mitigate the likely effects to people and property. The CBU member countries likely to be affected include Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Martin, U.S. Virgin Islands and the Turks and Caicos. And as we continue our hurricane coverage, we head over now to Anguilla, where we have live on the line. Joining us is Keith Stonegraves. Irma is forecasting to hit Anguilla as a Category 5. And Mr. Graves, we're asking you for an update as to what's taking place there at this point in time.
Yes, a very good evening from Anguilla. The situation here, residents are just about getting ready for the onslaught of Hurricane Irma. They did all the preparations that were necessary earlier today. 4 shelters have been opened by the government in Anguilla, and the residents here have taken the warnings very, very seriously. And as I said, I've done all the necessary preparations. The airport was closed earlier. Also, the seaport was also closed. So what it is now, residents are just waiting for the passage of Hurricane Irma. With everything in place, the folks have taken the warning very, very seriously.
Thank you very much, Keith Stonegraves, over there in Anguilla. Do be safe. Now we're moving on. We're still covering tropical storm. This time we're looking at Tropical Storm Jose, and before the potentially catastrophic Hurricane Irma has reached the Leeward Islands, another storm has formed in the Atlantic, and that forecasters say that the Lesser Antilles need to keep an eye on. We're talking now of Tropical Storm Jose, carrying maximum sustained winds near 45 miles per hour and is 1,400 miles east of the Lesser Antilles, and it's moving to the west-northwest at 12 miles per hour. The National Hurricane Center in Miami says some strengthening is forecast during the next 48 hours, and Jose could become a hurricane by Friday. However, there is no watch, and there are no watches or warnings in place at this time. And countries in the Leeward Islands brace for the passage of dangerous Hurricane Irma. That's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, log on to CarnaNews.com. We'll be back here again tomorrow, where we continue our special coverage on Hurricane Irma and Tropical Storm Jose. But from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching. Do have yourselves a good night. Please be safe, everyone.